So as promised, I'm going to do a recap of January's books that I've read thus far. I did a 2020 recap in my last video. I'll link it up in the cards, or is that how you link things in cards? Link it up there. So I did a 2020 review, and I said in that video I was going to do monthly reviews here on out because trying to review over 50 books at a time is a lot. So I've read 6 books in January. I thought I'd just whip through them really fast. You can follow the books that I'm reading currently and want to read on the story graph. I have switched from Goodreads to the story graph. You can find me Lemon Perspective on the story graph if you're interested. Yeah, I guess so. The first book I read was 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup. It's a memoir, biography, whatever you want to call it, about the life of Solomon Northup. He is just a regular father, landowner person who then gets picked up into the slave trade, and he talks about his 12 years living as a slave and how he comes out of that and what he does in reflection of it. Really wonderfully written. It is of the time period, sort of. It's not like modern day linguistics, so it takes a second to get used to, but only a second. It's not anything unbearable. But if you're at all interested in like a memoir that has very real context, then pick up 12 Years a Slave. I would recommend it. The next one I picked up was Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. I had mentioned how much I have really grasped onto adventure memoirs recently. I talked about that in my last video, but this one, just as good as all the other ones that I had read. I've read 2 Krakauers. I read obviously Into the Wild back in high school. Loved it, and then I read Wild last year by Cheryl Strayed, and then I read Into Thin Air. I just found it on my parents' bookshelf. Actually, I also found 12 Years a Slave, and the next one I'm going to talk about, I also found on their bookshelf. Just books that I had wanted to read forever, and I went home to clean out their bookshelf and found them. So Into Thin Air, I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was incredible. He's had this desire to climb Mount Everest for as long as he could remember, and so he kind of does it in tandem with writing a story about it. And so he talks about one of the deadliest seasons on Everest, and of which he was a part of. So if you're interested in nonfiction, adventure, but very realistic sort of novels, I highly recommend Into Thin Air. The next one I also found on my parents' bookshelf and had been wanting to read forever, Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Incredible. This book is alluded to in almost every other book that I read in 2020. Like, you want to talk about race? Why I'm no longer talking to white people about race? White fragility. All of those books always alluded to Between the World and Me. And I feel like I did a disservice again to myself where I didn't read this prior to the other novels, but I really didn't, because I got so much out of this book, even without having it in context of the other ones. So I would say out of all of the books that I've read between last year and this year that have the BIPOC equality sort of narrative, this is the one to pick up first, if not only, but definitely first. Now we're moving on to books that I got from the library. The first one is this one. I haven't returned it yet. The first one is this one, Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. In one word, incredible. You have to read this. I'm not saying that it's the most flawless, airtight animal agricultural argument you've ever read. He definitely leans into your ethos, pathos, whatever you want to call it, like your emotional heartstrings, your ethical heartstrings. He definitely leads you to finding those parts of yourself. So I'm not saying it's the most research-based, airtight, this is the only novel you have to read, but I think if you want even a basic understanding of how, what, when, why, where animals end up on your plate, this is the one to start with. I've read a couple novels. He refers to Michael Pollan's The Omnivore's Dilemma in here, and I read that back in high school, and it was one of the books that made me stop eating meat. And he actually refers to it in this in sort of in light that I had not thought about it. I haven't read the Pollan book in a long time, but he kind of criticizes it in ways that I didn't, 10 years ago when I read it. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend this book. I'd actually highly recommend this guy as an author in general. Last year I read Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by him, and it was one of my highlights of the year. And I've just put a hold on, what is the other one? I just put a hold on one of his books. Everything is Illuminated is one of the really popular ones by him. I have not read that one yet, but I have got a feeling I'm going to be following this author and probably reading everything. We Are the Weather, Saving the Planet Begins at Breakfast. So I'm excited to see kind of how his narrative transfers to a different perspective, because obviously he's talking, he does his own like personal research because he had a son, and he wants to build his son's ethical basis and also like familial basis, and it all kind of ties back to food for him. And so this is very much a self journey of figuring out how he's going to navigate eating animals in his newfound family. And I'm interested to see how kind of like the ethics and the morals of this book transfer to a more planetary, like Save the Planet climate change sort of narrative, which I'm anticipating will be in We Are the Weather. So review to come soon, but this one, highly recommend. The next one I read, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I found The Magician's Nephew on my parents' bookshelf, and it was one of those like ginormous, like kids read along big font books. But I read it anyway because I was just so desperate for novels. And so I read The Magician's Nephew, and I just figured, why not finish the series? So I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Again, there's nothing like extra special about these, but they're definitely a nice, refreshing change of pace if you're used to very heavy or reflective novels. It's just a different fantasy world you can be a part of. The last one that I just finished actually this morning, Little Fires Everywhere. I don't have problems with the novel. I just didn't take to it as well as I was anticipating I would. I am normally very for like the dystopian, what the world could be if the world was what we, imagined or didn't imagine. And I guess I was anticipating delving into like a Hunger Games dystopia or like Divergent. I was anticipating like delving into a whole world and learning about a dystopian future that we could be a part of one day. That is not this. They only she kind of touches on perfection and the idea of rules, and everything has its place and everybody has to stick to, the game or you will have chaos. But it's not so dystopian in the way that we're sunk into a whole different mindset of how you have to navigate the book. So I don't know if maybe that was a letdown for me. I was like really in the mood to move to a fantasy dystopian world. But I mean, it's not a bad book. I just don't know. I'm gonna forget about this pretty soon. Like, it's not gonna be one that I remember later, if that's a good way to explain it. I'm also right now, like currently, just started reading this morning, the 7th book of the series of unfortunate events. I'm on The Vile Village. I have nothing bad to say, nothing good to say about these novels. They're all pretty much the same. They're for children. It's fine. So yeah, I guess the highlight for January, if I had to pick one, would definitely be Ding Ding Ding, eating animals. I'd say this is probably my favorite one. Next to this would be Between the World and Me. So the 2 of this month, this, Between the World and Me. Would love to know what books you've read this month. I'm working on a whole bunch of holds on the library that should be coming in soon. So hopefully I'll be able to get a couple more reviews out as the months go on. Hopefully I will still keep reading. Here's to hoping. So anyway, if you've been reading great books, let me know what they are. If you have recommendations for me, would love to know. And if you want to see what I'm reading, currently reading, want to read, follow me on the story graph at Lemon Perspective. Thank you so much for watching. You can subscribe if you'd like, and you can like it if you'd like. I upload every now and again and very inconsistently, so take that as you will. If you want to know when I upload, there's a bell. I honestly have never touched a bell, so I don't really know what it does for you, but people say that you can turn it on if you want to turn it on. I guess I'd suggest turning it on because I don't upload very consistently. And if you want to know when I upload, you might as well get a notification for it. So thank you, and bye.